Hello and welcome. I am Jim Zartman, and this is The Art of Growth, where we use the Enneagram and the best tools we can find to help individuals and organizations transform. We want to thank you all because this has been an incredible season for us at The Art of Growth. Thank you to everyone who has taken our beta Enneagram test, who has participated in our webinars, and are now jumping on board for our group coaching. It's been really incredible for us to put faces and names behind some of our listeners out there. And we are so grateful to be part of your story in that way. Because although we appreciate and enjoy having a podcast with a high number of listeners, ultimately this is about forming a community of transformation and not just a successful podcast. Our next free webinar is going to be June 17th. At 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And what we want to talk about in this one is leading through this transition. There's a lot of unique things about this time from a technology perspective, from a human perspective. And so we want to talk a little bit about that in this webinar. And what our webinars have been turning into, in I think a really interesting way, is sort of crowdsourcing some wisdom around a topic, including today's episode that comes on the back of another webinar we did. We're kind of using this time to crowdsource some wisdom, and that is a really incredible experience for us. And it also allows all of you to help curate some of the content that we create. So you can sign up for that webinar now on our website, www.theartofgrowth.org. If you aren't sure of your type yet, you can go on our website and take our free Enneagram test that's right there on the homepage. Online tests have averaged about a 55% accuracy, and we really wanted to strive to change that and to improve the accuracy rating on online tests. And so we designed our own, and we designed it based on what we've learned at The Art of Growth by doing panels, by hearing from each type what it's like to be them. We use their own language to describe not just their manifestations, but their motivations, their core motivations. And so this test gets at something that a lot of other tests just can't get at. Now, there is nothing that is more accurate than actually having a typing interview, because in that we also are looking for your energy behind a statement, your facial expression, your demeanor, how quickly you answer. There's all kinds of things. So if you want to do a typing interview, those are the most accurate. But as far as an online test goes, we think that this is about as good as it gets. So you can get on, you can take that for free right now as we're still working out some of the kinks. So you can do that at theartofgrowth.org as well. One thing I don't think I explained very clearly on previous times I've talked about the group coaching is that this is not group coaching where you need to bring a group to us. So there's a differentiation we would make between group coaching and team coaching. Team coaching is when we go in and work with an organization or an established group of people. Group coaching, you actually join a group of people who you don't know of all different types, and you go on a bit of a journey with them. And for me, I don't think anything has taught me more about the Enneagram than being in a group setting and listening to people talk about what it was like to be them. I have learned so much about myself and had increased empathy and understanding of other types and other people through that journey. And we love that other people are starting to have that experience. We've opened a Wednesday night group in June. It'll meet Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're some of our listeners in Australia or something, so that's 10:30 a.m. the following day for you, since you're 14 hours ahead. And in July, we're going to move to a 3-month model where you sign up for a 3-month period, and you go through with a group of 6 to 8 for 3 months to really delve deep into understanding of self and the other. There's a lot in the Enneagram about self-awareness, but this is also including the social awareness piece, which is a little bit of what we're talking about today. And as always, you can reach out to us if you'd like to bring us into your institution, talk about consulting, coaching, training, all that stuff. Okay, that was a lot, but we've had a lot going on, which is amazing. And we are so, so grateful for those of you who are participating with us. It has just been an absolute honor to be a part of your story and to tread on that holy ground. And it has just been a lot of fun. Let's just say that. It has been so much fun to get to do this. So without further ado, Joel and Suzanne and I are going to talk a little bit about this movement from self-awareness to social awareness. Let's get into it. So people have issues when they are relating to each other.
You're kidding.
This is a real thing that happens between people. And it happens within a particular framework. So we all are reading our environment. We are all interpreting what we are reading. And then we are responding based on what we have read and interpreted. So there's the reading, whether it's in the conversation or someone's actions or whatever it is. There is interpretation of what we are reading. And then there is a response. And somewhere within that structure, in one of those stages or more, there is a breakdown of something that happens. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this concept of moving from self-awareness to social awareness. So much of the Enneagram doesn't deal enough with the social awareness. They deal a lot with the self-awareness, but they don't go far enough as far as how am I impacting the world around me, and how is that world impacting me as I go through my reading, interpretation, and responding.
Yeah, I think the social component is so critically important to our own development. And I think that's the part that's missing. A lot of what's discussed in the Enneagram is managing your own reactivity. So when you're present to other people, what are the triggers that are being activated in you? So it's very inward. It's like the focus comes right back to you. Like, oh yeah, I got to pay attention to that, which is really important. You can't really develop social intelligence, I think, without that component of self-awareness. But if our attention is always on us and on what's being triggered in me, then there's a certain amount that we can grow in that space. But then what about how am I being experienced by them? What about that piece? Why are the triggers? Now, certainly there's the managing of the triggers, which oftentimes get talked about as sort of an escapist kind of thing. It's like, oh, go in and down, focus in on your belly region, which I do. I teach people to do this. Yeah. It's so important because when you're all activated, it's really difficult to have a response. It's more of a reaction. But there's that can just be the escape and not coming back to what truth is there for me to discover here? Like someone has a response to me that has made me very upset. What is there for me to learn in that? Like maybe there's something I can grow from that experience. And, so I think that's the big part of it that I am eager to develop because I don't know much out there that's talking about that. So
I think that's really important to think about, that you own the energy you bring into a space. And it is one thing to recognize where you are, but where are you in relationship to someone else, and where might they be? And it's complicated. Your methodology, your structure, your three phases, it's exponentially harder because each stage of your structure could be multiplied by 9. So 9 times 9 times 9.
Yes.
And now you've extended my ability to do math in my head.
Is it 9 to the 9th power, right?
Well, that 9 cubed, I think.
Is it 9 cubed? Okay.
But again, somebody's going to do the math
I
for me.
do not know. You both have gone beyond me, so
right.
Just in that language.
And if that happens, then what hope do any of us have of relating well to one another? It kind of wants to keep me in my own bubble.
Yeah.
And man, do I want to get out of this bubble. So give me some hope. How do we reconcile the fact that each of us is bringing very different ways of navigating those 3 steps? And if we're all doing that, then I picture like this messy room of, I picture Pigpen with all of his stuff around him from Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it feels like.
Well, and you just articulated every communication breakdown and every relational issue that has ever happened among humans.
Yeah.
Is that right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and from each type, I mean, if we're looking
and that's the podcast, folks.
That's it, yeah.
That's the problem. We're done.
If you want more, you have to pay for it. So.
we only get to talk about the problems in the podcast.
That's
now
right.
we're going to leave all the solutions.
You have to pay for it. Yeah.
Solutions
it's good
will
marketing.
only be in coaching.
We present the problem, we walk away. Now you're pissed and you have to pay for it to get it.
I mean, that's a lot of people's whole business.
Totally. It totally is.
We'll definitely want to go into some of the solutions, some of the ways that we can, even though we're in a very general context here, we can't be as specific as we can in coaching in reality. But yeah, let's talk about some of the ways out.
Yeah. There is both the awareness of how am I responding right now? There is that. And what truth could I discover about me that could help me be better in this relationship or in this team context at work? And that is very important. That's a huge part of growth. And for each type, there is a unique path. That formulation you start out with, Jim, is true for all. It's this, your body picks up on something, your type interprets it, and then you have a reaction that's driven by the ego of the type, the preservation of the type. It's the defense that we have, the defense mechanism that keeps the whole thing together. And we have this happen instantaneously. There's no thought. It's just immediate. And there's that piece. And then there's the piece of how do I bring out the best in other people? How do I tune my attention now outward to help people, not in a manipulative way, but to actually serve them well? That is the complex part because people are vastly different. And there's, as you mentioned, 9 types. And then there's the subtypes. And then there's culture and context and even gender plays a role. There's all these sorts of overlays in this. So it is complicated. And there was no way we could tackle all of that in a podcast or in many podcasts. But it's important to tune in to ourselves, what's happening in me right now, and how do I respond to this energy that I'm picking up. I imagine it as the body picks up on data, energy, comfort, discomfort in the environment before it's interpreted, before it hits even the level of emotion.
Instinctual.
It's instinctual. Absolutely. Yeah. It's again, it's think of sense. It's really difficult. I have these conversations sometimes with my clients and they're like, what does that feel like? Like it's really difficult if you're not a body-oriented person to tune into what is it that you're picking up that is pretty much sense and not emotion. And then it gets translated to emotion, which, for body types tends more to be anger. For heart types, more grief, sadness, shame. For head types, anxiety, fear. And then what happens is we interpret that, and that's different from each type. But from the centers, I think there's an attempt with that data that the body has picked up to control. There's a desire or sense of needing to control what's happening to the body. For heart types, there's more of a sense of responsibility. What is my responsibility as a result of what I'm picking up around me? For head types, it's more of an anticipation of what is going to be expected, what is coming around the corner. There's these expectations. So that gets turned into what we do with the interpretation, and then we have this reaction. And I think that's knowing that can help us start to interrupt that pattern, to look at, I'm making an interpretation of what I'm picking up on. I walk into a room as a head type and I don't pick up on emotion as much. I don't pick up on agenda or, what I pick up on is if the environment's a little down, I'll pick up on the negativity because my type hates negativity and hates pain, hates discomfort. So it avoids it. And if I pick up on it and I can't avoid it, I want to reframe it or I want to change and control that. That's what I want to control. It's like I want to change that environment so that it's positive. As we become aware of that then we can say, okay, this is where I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop short of that. I'm going to stop short of the interpretation. And that gives a better response, which then allows me to then look at the other people and pay attention to where they're at. And not see it as the problem's out there, and that's why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Or the problem is me, and that's why people are feeling what they're feeling. Those tend to be the ways that we respond to the world around us.
There's definitely a reading of something, but I think in the good place, or when I'm in a good place, I remind myself before I go from reading to interpreting that I don't actually know what's going on. I have to remind myself that I don't actually know where this person has come from. If I'm having some kind of emotional reaction against whatever is happening in front of me, I'm reminding myself that I don't understand it. And so I think the straight line that can somehow happen, that usually happens between reading a situation, interpreting it, and reacting to it, can get much better when I do go into the curiosity and ask and remind myself I don't actually know what's going on and I need to find out before I can actually respond instead of react. And this is something that came up on the webinar is when people were talking about like what goes wrong in a situation, they were answering very much according to their type. You know, I'm a 1, so I do this. I'm a 3, so I do this. I'm a 6, so I do this. But when it came to like in a healthy place, what do you do? The problems were extremely unique, but the solutions look eerily similar. I'm more curious. I'm more open. I'm more invitational. I want to understand more about what's going on. I keep the door open. All of these different languages as far as like there is a opening that occurs instead of a direct line.
Yeah, I picked up on that as well. The mutual ground of I can appreciate what's going on around me when I'm in a good place and I don't have to internalize it. And so that I saw that as well, that each type would tend to read certain data in the room, but every type could be open to the idea that there's more data they don't know or aren't seeing if they were coming to it from a place of calm and confidence and integration. So I think about the fact that every situation contains every piece of data we could want or could possibly interpret. And each type will pick up on certain data, not the whole. None of us can pick up on all of it, I don't believe. And so you pick up on the data that your type is inclined to see. And the more you pick up on that, the more of that you will see, kind of like our Facebook algorithm. The more you click on certain links, the more of those ads you will get. And so the trick is when you can recognize that you're seeing that data and it's only a part of the whole and can consider what else am I not seeing? How do I ask about it in a way that invites more information? Then I think you increase your ability to interact positively with others.
That's so good. There's so much in that in our experience. Our type and our life experience, it creates this algorithm for what we see.
Yeah.
And it's like no matter what situation we're in, like the world is trying to show us those ads. It's trying to give us be like, oh, this means this. So I'm going to put this on your page. This is the thing I'm always going to show you because it's the thing that you've seen over and over again. And so there is so much confirmation bias in our personal operating system. And it is only when we break out of that we're actually going to be experienced the way we want to be experienced.
Yeah.
And we're going to experience the world around us the way we actually want to.
Yeah. There's so much when it comes to communication, whether we're perceiving that the world out there is the problem from our type or we're the problem. And I think that's a big part of what causes this breakdown is if I perceive the problem is out there, then I don't even believe that there's types. I think this whole Enneagram thing is bunk because quite frankly, it's just like it's just you're just trying to be nice and come up with reasons for why people are whacked. As far as I'm concerned, they're just crazy and they need to straighten up. You know, this is literally what I hear from some people. It's that approach, and it's one that I owned for most of my life.
Yeah.
Was a no. It's clearly people are crazy. You know. And I believed it so strongly that for me the whole personality piece was just it was just liberals or weak-minded people trying to come up with reasons for why people are the way they are instead of calling out truth. So for me it was like, this is the truth. These are and that was a big hindrance for me in social interactions. And I didn't understand why people would leave, be like, I don't want to be around you, or why we got into repeated fights, my wife and I, or, friends. And coming back to, there's the possibility that I'm perceiving the world through my lens, and that maybe there's other views. And given that I've already changed mine over the course of the years, occasionally here and there have had my own growth, could it be possible that there's more than what I see? If I've already changed, could there be possibly many different iterations of this and many different views? And so that, I think, is where growth can take place, where you can start to understand maybe it's not everybody else. Maybe, and then sometimes it goes the other direction for other Enneagram types, which is it's all me. It's clearly me. I'm the
what's
problem.
Wrong with me?
What's wrong with me is the question.
Those seem to be the two dominant questions. What's wrong with me? Or what's wrong with you? If those are your only two questions, you have lost every time.
Yeah. There's no moving forward in either direction. Because it's funny, because if you think everybody else is the problem, you end up pushing them away. If you're the problem, you pull yourself away. There's still not the third dimension, which we've talked about,
right.
And that is the we factor, the us together factor. And so people who fall on their swords oftentimes are the people that it looks noble, it's me, it's all me, but it actually prevents that wonderful magic that happens when we wrestle through with somebody we love and care about, or somebody we work with who we care about and would like to have a better work relationship, and then you ascend to that higher level.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear from you, Suzanne, because I know you talk about this in your work with teams and with companies on how you have all these different people who are on a team, but when they come together, they really create this other entity.
Yes. Yeah. And in some coaching, they give it the name the third entity, meaning it's not me and you, it's the combination of me and you. So it brings in a third thing to think about and to evaluate objectively as its own being. And I see that a lot when it comes to different interactions I have with people. One would hope I'm consistent, but I'm a human. I'm not. I bring myself, but others bring out different things in me. And different people bring out different things in me. And so I am different in combination with other people.
That's really good.
But that's so much of that social awareness is realizing even that piece.
Yeah.
I do have an operating system. I have certain things that come up most frequently, but there is actually different things that come out of me and around different kinds of people.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, sure.
It's what happens.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I see that even in my group of friends. In some cases, I'm the listener, and in other cases, I'm the one leading the discussion. Yeah. And I don't mind that. And I sort of know that. Like if I'm going to head out and have some drinks with some friends, I kind of know which role I'm about to play. And I think that that's actually a really good thing, because if I was trying to be the one leading in every situation, there'd be some people I wouldn't respond well with, because that's just not what works with them.
Let me just say that that's part of your, and we suspect, that's part of your social instinct. And Jim, you have that as well.
Yeah.
And that social instinct does actually seek out, in what ways do I adapt? In what ways do I need to adapt to fit into this group?
Yeah.
And so self-preservational types might be listening to this and saying, I don't do that at all. Like I'm fairly consistent when I show up. That would be true for them. But there's a growth in that for them as well, as we're attempting to not be equally balanced with all three instincts, self-preservational, social, or sexual, or one-on-one as it's sometimes called, is we want to know that they exist and also tap into them when it's appropriate to tap into them. So if we're in a social setting, to learn adaptation like that,
right, and
to recognize I'm in a group right now. How do I flex with this group? How do I work with this group? And how do I understand them and their needs? And so those are important, I think, as growth happens.
Well, and what's coming up for me is this idea of just being aware of it. We can make different choices by just recognizing that there are other ways to show up and to be.
Yeah, and I see all of it as a skill set. I think so much in where I get frustrated when people talk about the Enneagram, and it's basically like, well, this is just kind of who I am, and you need to accept it, or I need to accept this about myself. And I'm like, well, that's partly true, but it's not very holistic because you do have to honor the third entity. And I think so much of like the self-work world doesn't honor the other entity. Like there is stuff between my wife and I, of course, but we find the solutions when we honor the third entity, like that we have created together, the sacred space that we've created together, where it's not really about me, it's not really about you, it's really about this sacred other. And in the honoring of the sacred other, we are going to be motivated to find the solutions. We're going to be motivated to find the ways to connect in that space. And I think for people who have never owned really themselves, really owned their story, they do need that piece of like really seeing themselves and owning themselves and having that self-acceptance and self-appreciation and honoring of the self if they haven't done that enough. But that is only part of the story. It's not a completion to do that. And it's not a completion to just say, yes, you, and like, I accept you fully as you are, as if that was like, everything is fine. But really, when are we trying to be more holistic about this?
Well, there's a lie in that approach. Like, I'm here for you, and my entire world is you. Because what happens with that is your needs are still present. It's just that you have managed to figure out a different way of getting your needs met. And instead of it being direct, it's become indirect, which then creates this other problem within that third entity, which is that it's loaded with a lot of expectations. So if I keep merging with you, if I keep serving you, if I keep meeting your needs, my hope is somehow my needs are going to get met in some other way.
Yep.
I still have them. I still am seeking to get them met, but indirectly. And I keep repressing them visibly so that it doesn't create a problem between me and you. But it actually does create a problem because the other person, and I'm convinced of this, everybody wants to both receive and give. The measures of those are different, I think, for types. But everybody has a desire to do something, to contribute something to the world around them. And if they're stymied in that process because the other person does not have a need, well, then it prevents that third entity from really developing to what it could. And so I think it's part of the process is for those of us who tend to merge or tend to resist and pay no attention to our own needs, but pay attention to the needs of other people. It's to really tune back into who am I so that I can bring myself into this because there's this person and there's me. And if we own our sort of selves, our boundaried selves, and we come into this and work towards that third entity, then it can happen. But if I'm denying myself, I can't actually come into that space and create anything. I'm more or less trying to serve the other person and keep them happy. So I think that is part of it is the communication of what are my needs? How do I communicate those? And how do I receive from other people? And then what are their needs? And how can I hear that and also do my best to serve those as well?
Yeah, I think that first question of what are my needs is easier for some. Just even recognizing what are my needs. And then the second step of communicating it, that's a skill in and of itself.
Yeah.
And then I really love the invitation that you gave us to then consider what are the other person's needs and helping them articulate it so that together we could figure out the combination.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to end it there for now, but I feel like I should say to be continued. Everything we're doing is just another step in movement in a particular direction, and everything feels like it's to be continued. It always feels like we stopped short in the conversation, but that's okay. That's just the way this is. And we are so thankful that you'll just be on this journey with us. There isn't really a conclusion. This isn't a destination pursuit. This is a process pursuit. This is a journey pursuit. And that is what your life is. And so that's what we want to acknowledge. We're not trying to wrap things up nicely in a bow, but we are trying to continue something that is incredibly important. And that is how we interact with the world around us so that we and the people around us experience us in the way we want to be experienced, and that we get a little bit more out of this life that we want to see happen. This is our one wild ride. So let's do it really well. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, all of that stuff about the group coaching on Wednesday nights in June and the 3-month process that starts in July, the webinar on the 17th of June, Wednesday afternoon, about leadership, our Enneagram tests, please go to theartofgrowth.org and take a look at any of these things, or sign up for our email list so that you can get future information about what we're going to be doing so you don't miss the thing. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast, and if you leave us a review on iTunes, it really helps people find the show. As always, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor to be a part of your journey. Have an amazing week.